2 of these mugs are poisoned. Rainn.
I drink from all 3 to save your life.
It is so great to be with you, and what better way to celebrate the 150th anniversary of this branch of the Young Men's Christian Association than by having a Jew interview a Baha'i about why the fuck nobody is spiritual. I'm sure that's what they envisioned, and you were telling me backstage that you were driving a moving van when you first moved to New York. What was that experience?
First of all, not far from here, I lived for a while on 105th and 2nd during the crack epidemic in 1987. I'm not joking. And after getting burglarized and getting the crap beaten out of me, I finally moved. So I have a little bit of trauma of the Upper East Side. I used to slink from East Harlem down into this nice little neighborhood here to go to a deli or get a soft serve or something like that. But I spent many years in New York struggling to pay rent as a theater actor, and I drove a moving van. It was called, and relevant to this book, it was actually called the Transcendent Moving Company.
Really?
No joke. A man, a van, a sense of higher purpose. And I had a van with little wings and a halo, and I used to, anytime I wanted to work, I would plaster little posters around with the little things that you rip off for a man with a van. I would move dirty futons and lamps and IKEA dressers, and it was a great way to make money, but I never could have possibly envisioned when I was doing that work and sweating through my clothes that I would be sitting on this incredible stage having a conversation about a book that I wrote. I'm so thrilled.
I'm thrilled as well that you made it. Now, I was going to start a little lighter and get to this a little later, but you mentioned in the book a period that might have coincided with this, where you were, as you described it, in hell, I think, at various times of your life. And if you hadn't read the book yet, I'm sorry for the spoiler or the shock, but you have been in your life very low. And I wonder if you would tell the audience what, as funny or as tragic or as combined as you'd like to, what was your hell, and what was it physically and what was it spiritually?
Yeah, I think that hell is a great word. I'm glad you jumped right to it, because I do feel that as opposed to hell being some kind of place.
Page 175, I've been in hell before.
Yes. It's not a place of fire and brimstone, it's a condition, and it's an internal condition. And yeah, I've been there many times in my life. And during the moving van years, the Transcendent Moving Company years, was a period of time where I had been raised a member of the Baha'i faith. I grew up with beautiful Baha'i teachings, but when I came in my 20s to New York City to become an actor, I didn't want anything to do with religion or spirituality or morality. I wanted to have sex with my girlfriend and not feel guilty about it. I wanted to do drugs and alcohol and not feel guilty about it, like so many young people do. It's like a Baha'i rumspringa. And Bahramspringa. And after I got out of acting school, things got pretty dark for a pretty long period of time. I remember there was one Christmas morning I woke up. It was Christmas morning and about 10 a.m., hungover, smoked a joint first thing, and then had a really negative reaction to it and started vomiting and going into kind of heart palpitations and paranoia and all that stuff. And I saw the face of God. This was when I was living in an abandoned beer brewery in Brownsville, Brooklyn. And it was I would say that was kind of the low, and kind of when I realized, and I swore to the face of God I wasn't going to do drugs anymore. And spoiler alert, I haven't done any drugs since that fateful Christmas morning.
2018,
Thank you,
right?
Jesus.
When was it?
That would have been 91, I think.
Okay.
So
It's an amazing weed.
But so at the time, what I was suffering from is what nowadays people call, mental health issues. So depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, loneliness. And that's what kind of started me kind of back on what I call a spiritual journey.
I have a guess as to what God looks like.
Okay?
Is it a man with a long white beard? I always thought that would be the funniest thing. If you got to heaven and it was just an old man with a long white beard. And you're like, we were just right? And he's like, yeah, no, we were right.
Yeah. Sistine Chapel, that was me.
Nailed
I
it.
posed for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're like, we thought this was like a weird choice, not like an obvious choice.
Funny. I saw, there's a theologian named Paul Tillich, and he calls God the ground of all being. And I like that idea because it removes God from some kind of heavenly presence. And just by using the word ground, but the ground of all being, that's kind of what I saw. I saw a limitless horizon that looked a little bit more like a Mark Rothko painting than anything else. But it was pulsating. Maybe I was hallucinating. I was hallucinating, but it definitely was the face of God. It didn't look like a face, though.
Hell is abstract art.
Basically. Indeed.
And this journey, how much did that stay present? You also talk in the book about that it is a daily thing to stay spiritual and healthy. How linear has that ascent out of hell in the face of God been? And have you had certain times that were better than others? Is it a day-to-day thing?
Yeah.
What is your spiritual journey since then?
Well, so first of all, let's talk about the dailiness. So I have an anxiety disorder, and I liken having an anxiety disorder to someone with diabetes, where you have to check your insulin every day, do little blood tests, monitor what you eat, and if you do, you're fine. You can run a marathon, you can live to 100. But I have to monitor my anxiety on a daily basis. Part of that is a spiritual practice, so prayer and meditation is part of that. Staying grounded, seeking to stay humble, seeking to stay of service, keeping on some kind of spiritual track helps me a great deal. Going back to that journey, for me, it really came down to a deep exploration on the meaning of life. I think a lot of people are not forced to look at the meaning of life quite in the way that I was, and I'm so grateful for that hell because it forced me to take that path. Julia Cameron, the writer of The Artist's Way, said, I came to spirituality not out of virtue, but out of necessity. And I would describe that similarly.
I think that there is an advantage to people who reach a bottom, who see the face of God on Christmas morning after some really bad weed, and are broke and all that. And I do think that when we are in a place of luxury and privilege, it can be hard to realize that you have a spiritually bereft life. And I think we know a lot of people, and I have been one of them many times, who have trouble confronting that because everything seems so easy.
This is one of the traps of materialism.
Yeah.
It creates tremendous comfort, and it allows you to dissociate from the uncomfortable. So thoughts of death, disappointment, frustration, depression even, you can medicate yourself with ESPN, with apps on your phone, with dating apps, with social media, seeing friends. And I view Los Angeles as a city kind of mired in this kind of like dissociation from what Jung would call the shadow self. And I feel fortunate to have journeyed there. And I think that what's happening these days, and forgive me for skipping ahead a little bit, why we need a spiritual revolution is because people are I don't know if 8 years ago we would have had this many people here for a discussion on spirituality. You know, this New York City's like, I don't listen to NPR and, you know. There is a renewed interest I've found even by you, BJ, and I'd love to hear about your take on this. There's a renewed interest in spiritual topics because as systems are falling apart and things seem to be rapidly unraveling and not working so well, people are not getting along, and there's wars in Europe again, and the mental health epidemic is eating at the fabric of today's young people. People are saying more and more like, well, we threw out everything having to do with spirituality for many decades, and we hoped that secular liberal, philosophies and Obama was going to save us, and it didn't. And so let's look at some other modalities.
I think you say something very profound in the book along those lines, which is that we focus so much on practical issues and true important pragmatic things like healthcare or political arguments and environmental concerns, et cetera. But what gets lost is the why of any of it. And sometimes I think about how everyone arguing about everything must deep down have the same values, unless they're really, really so fucked up that I can't even empathize. Do you know what I mean? But I think everyone must deep down be wanting some common goal, and yet there's absolutely no sense of that. We don't feel that. And so when we have a political argument or a practical argument, or where do you want to go to dinner? I mean, any of these things, there's a lack of this common sense of what is good, what is ideal. You say it so much better than I do. Can you just say it better?
I'm going to say the same thing, but better.
Great.
The systems that contemporary society are operating on are founded upon the worst qualities of humanity. One-upsmanship, backstabbing, dog eat dog, every man for himself, selfishness, greed, and all of these competitive systems are these antagonistic systems, systems based on competition and contest in every venue, are ripping us apart. So you take one of the targets that I bring up a lot in the book is the American partisan system, is partisan politics. So people often think of, in our political system, if we only had another charismatic president, then things would be okay. If we only had another Obama or a JFK or a Ronald Reagan, then things would be okay. Or if we fixed gerrymandering, then things would be okay. Or if we, had, term limits in this way, then things would be okay. These are all Band-Aids on a system that pits two parties against each other in an unbridled pursuit of power. And as long as you have a system operating on an unbridled pursuit of power and not public service, it's unsustainable and it's going to break down. This is just one example, and you can look at any existing system. I'm sure people work in various systems. He's in the cement business, and she's a school teacher, and this person is in dry cleaning and import and shipping, and every system is starting to feeling like it's unraveling and it is unsustainable. And this is kind of where I have a lot of funny stories in the book too. This got dark really quick. But what I posit is that we can reimagine these systems based on spiritual principles. And that doesn't have to be some kind of pie in the sky, hippy-dippy, John Lennon holding hands, kumbaya type of thing. We can literally rebuild systems. And that's why spirituality, to me, is a practical tool for personal transformation, but also societal transformation.
So one of your, maybe the most entertaining chapter to me is the manifesto of how one would build a spiritual revolution.
Yeah.
What are the tenets of building a spiritual revolution?
Yeah, and it's funny that you bring that up, that was your favorite chapter, because I finished the book in the fall, and I was like, and it was past due, and I had to get it into my publisher and all of that stuff. And then I was like, and I had 9 chapters, and it was perfect, and I was very happy, and I was like, I can't finish the book. I need a 10th chapter. it's getting a little dark, just like this conversation, and I need to allow for some hope, and I need to bring some practical advice to bear. I need to provide some tools in the tool belt for a spiritual revolution. So the final chapter is 7 pillars of a spiritual revolution, and so I have 7 main ideas. One I'd like to talk to right now has to do with what I just discussed, which is reinventing adversarial systems. So again, every system that we have in contemporary Western capitalistic society is adversarialist. In the Baha'i faith, I use an example from my religion as a contretemps. Is that a word?
It
feels
just because I played the temp. I don't know every iteration.
Okay,
I didn't want to talk about The Office. Can you just focus on the book?
So in the Baha'i faith, every town, every city has what's called a local spiritual assembly that governs the affairs of that community. They are elected yearly. 9 people of New York City govern the Baha'i affairs of New York City, right? So what happens in this election? Well, it's a silent election, and it's a ballot, secret ballot. You write down people. The community gathers, prays and meditates, looks at kind of a list of everyone who lives in the city, contemplates the wisest and most selfless members of Manhattan, writes down these names. It's hard. There may not be 9. There might be 3, but writes down these names. There are 9 names. Puts them in the ballot box. They count them up. There's no campaigning. There's no yard signs. There's no money spent. No one ever says, like, I think I'd make a pretty good member of the local spiritual assembly of Manhattan, and I promise a spiritual chicken in every pot. Nothing like that happens. And then these people become kind of selfless servants, giving of their time, of their energy, and of their comfort for the betterment of the community, right? Now, couldn't you do that in America in some capacity? Maybe not in New York City, maybe not in New York State. Couldn't you have a tiny town like Pancake Flats, Nebraska, and its population 2,000, and you could get together, and instead of campaigning, instead of hundreds of millions of dollars being wasted in political campaigns every year, instead of candidates who are being elected because they're the best at insulting other candidates on a stage at a podium, because that's who won the debate, right? You turn on to CNN, who won the debate? Well, she got this great line in, and he got this great line in, and they replay those on the news cycle over and over again, and we're like, oh, that one got the most zingers in. Let's vote for the person who had the most zingers. And that's completely the inverse. But here's my problem, BJ, and I'm really passionate about this. Again, we look over and over again for Band-Aids, and we're not looking at a reinvention of how our society works based on, I'll say spiritual principles. One could just say common sense principles: kindness, humility, service, and compassion.
I have a belief that everyone is religious without realizing it, if they don't think they are. What, to you, is the difference between this much discussed cliche, I'm not religious, but I'm spiritual? What is the difference between religious and spiritual, and where would this revolution, if we are lucky enough to have one, where would it fall, on what side of the line?
That's a really great and perceptive question. You take it.
In the cement business, you probably come across a lot of...
Right, so I'm walking a balance in this book because...
But you don't have to here.
I don't have to here. I'm a member of a religion. I'm a member of a religious faith that is systematic. I believe that the forces of darkness, of dissolution, of chaos are very systematized. And we need to be systematized in counteracting those forces. It's that spirituality isn't just like, here's how I feel today at a yoga class, or when I ponder this crystal, or this certain Instagram Rumi quote, or this certain brand of incense. You can kind of feel my contempt coming through, can't you? That being said, I want to say very clearly, it is completely understandable why people would leave religion and want nothing to do with it. Because so many of the greatest ills humanity has ever suffered has been because of religion. So much of the judgment against LGBTQ people, the judgment that certain people are going to hell. You're going to hell because you're Jewish here in this YMCA. And there are so many reasons to not be religious. Like, I get it, I understand, and I have great empathy. One of the founders of the Baha'i faith is a man who went by the name of Abdul Baha, which means the servant of glory. Abdul Baha said, if religion be a cause of disunity, it were better that there were no religion. That's pretty revolutionary for the founder of a religion to say, hey, if religion causes disunity, just get rid of it. It's better to have none. And it has caused disunity. So maybe it has been good that we have discarded it. So I try and be true to that, and I want the book to be available to people who find themselves to be spiritual but not religious. God bless them. But I also have several chapters on religion itself and talk about what we are maybe missing by having discarded religion so whole cloth, which is community, transcendence, a shared morality, a sense that we are not material beings, we are spiritual beings, we have a higher purpose, and we're on a limited physical journey in this plane. The idea that we can give of ourselves in service to others for the greater good. Potlucks. There's much that we've lost by jettisoning religion at the same time, but I do want the book to be for everyone.
And how can we, you mentioned in this, you allude to it, and I apologize if I missed it, but in terms of creating a new mythology,
yeah.
Right? That we need religions, the story of a religion, why do we believe in this person or this principle? And if you have a nation of 350 million people or a world of 7 billion and you need to unite people around spiritual principles that I think generally overlap much more than they don't. Kindness, a desire for health and love and respect and sustainability and transcendence, all of these things. But to get people on that page, and I think there's a reason that you mentioned, Obama, JFK, Reagan, we do naturally look to symbols, figures, stories that we can create a mythology around rather than just principles. In a world that has so many different religions, in a country that has so many different beliefs, how do you think, if we can do this, how can we create that level of intensity without either reverting to one story in particular or creating one that people won't get on board with?
Well, that's why I propose a new religion. I create in chapter 7, it's called, Hey Kids, Let's Build a New Religion. And let's build the perfect religion, rather, and I create Soul Boom the Religion, which I take the greatest hits, the best aspects of all the world's faiths and put them together in one big stew of religion. And I have some of the qualities of Soul Boom the Religion as the centrality of the divine feminine. You know, indigenous faiths, so many of them, and ancient faiths always put kind of the goddess and the Mother Earth at the center of them, and we really have lost that in the patriarchy. I put cooperation, yeah, woo, ladies. Cooperation between science and faith, the idea that science and faith are not pitted against each other. They're two different ways of understanding one reality. That diversity is a beautiful thing. Diversity is something that creates harmony, like many flowers in a garden. But let's go to this mythology. So towards the end, again, we live in an adversarialist culture, and it's based on a mythology that it's every tribe for himself, it's tribe versus tribe, and survival of the fittest. And the people in our cave are going to fight the people of your cave because they're different. We're othering other people. But there's another mythology of humanity, and that is the mythology of shared resources, people cooperating with each other, creating bonds of love, of union, of unity, being in peace with nature, not against nature, living in harmony with it. If we look back at a different story of humanity, it will help us envision a different world, which we have to do, because another one of them is to keep hope alive and squash cynicism. Can I talk a little more?
Please.
So, I told this story, it was on NPR this morning.
It's the
You know who you
Gregory
are.
story?
I know this crowd. It's one of my favorite stories. I was fortunate enough to study acting with Andre Gregory, the star of My Dinner with Andre. And he would have tea with his students. It was wonderful. So I had tea with Andre Gregory. I was like, oh, tea with Andre Gregory. And he's like, so how are you, Rainn? And I was like, well, I'm feeling really cynical. I'm feeling pessimistic. The world is crap. I don't know what to do. Everything is getting worse. This was like in 1998, by the way. And he listened to me. And BJ, I'm not kidding. He reached across and he grabbed my arm hard. I mean, I remember the feeling right here on my forearm. He couldn't have grabbed it any harder. And he was like 87 years old. And he's like 190 now. And he looked into my eyes and he was like, don't do it. No, if you are cynical, they win. If you are pessimistic, they win. They want you to be cynical. They want you to be pessimistic. I'm not talking about the people in the balcony. If you go there, those forces win. You have to stay hopeful. You have to keep hope alive. You have to keep joy alive and stay positive. And he let go of me and I stumbled out of, on Greenwich Avenue, and it really did change my perspective, because he's 100% right. It's easy to get to feel in a wash of cynicism, and then nothing changes. Guess what? They do win, because nothing changes.
Well, we need a higher force to look towards, right? Otherwise, we're just looking at the ground and
Yeah.
complaining about what's already there.
Yeah.
Even in 1998.
Yeah.
We were joking about AI backstage.
Yeah.
What do you think the future holds in terms of that? Because I wonder how much we are racing towards. I spent time with a philosopher recently who is working on AI safety. And he mentioned that he asked the AI, what would I say about this or that? And it was pretty good. And I thought, how far are we from being able to type in, what would Jesus do in this situation? And knowing based on all the religious texts in the world, what is the consensus? And I wonder, do you have any optimism about AI, or do you think, as I do, that there might be a chance that this can be a ticking clock on, let's get our values locked in, because we're about to be grilled on, how do you want the world to work? Because I'll do it for you. That's what scares me, is that we're in such moral disarray at a time when we might suddenly have to give our final answer on what our values are.
Let me pitch you a movie.
I was hoping.
You write it. You direct it. I'll star in it.
Right.
I am the inventor of a new AI that has all of the world's holy texts in it, and the AI creates a new religion. But the followers, my followers, the followers of the AI, of which I am the high priest, truly believe that this AI is tapped into God, that they feel that the AI is a prophet of God. What do you think?
I think it's cool.
I don't know how it ends.
I'll ask AI how it ends.
Yeah. Can we ask Chat GPT?
Yeah.
Did someone ask how that movie ends? I think you get to something really important, which is My fear of AI has nothing to do with Skynet or it taking over the power grid or something like that. It has to do with a civilization that has lost its path and lost its footing. And then AI starts to set in all of these subtle ways. So it starts to write this paper and make this decision and do this for us and take away this set of jobs for us. And then we are lost as a species because we don't have a mission. We don't have a vision for who we are as 7 billion of us on the planet and why we're here. Are we here to wallow in comfort? Are we here to just live a nice, comfortable life and make sure your family is safe and happy? I don't think so. I think there's more to life than that. So as long as we're living in that mode, AI becomes very dangerous, and as Yeats said, the center cannot hold, and it becomes the great unraveling, and it sets into motion an even greater unraveling that's currently happening.
Now, a great man once said that cults are more fun as a follower, but you make more money as a leader.
That was Creed Bratton?
That was Creed Bratton. Now, you mentioned just now in the movie version of this, you could play the guy. And in fact, when you did quote sort of all the negative aspects of humanity, I did get a real Dwight Schrute in Mussolini mode. I thought, he's awfully good at this. You're very in touch with it. How do you feel about that interesting tension of being a much better known figure than almost anyone who would write a spiritual book, but also not known for that? And I will say sort of an actual spiritual awakening of mine that I think of all the time, and I quoted without attribution in a book I wrote. There was a bulletin board at the office where people put up articles, remember?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And this was back when it was a big deal if someone wrote an article about one of us. And there was a profile on you, and you said in the article, the universe tells you what it wants from you. Do you remember that?
No.
Yeah. I had never heard a sentence like that before, and I always would ask myself what that meant for me and what the universe was trying to tell me it wanted from me. And I wonder, in terms of your public persona, your authorship, your excellent and inspiring book and views on this, what do you think the universe wants from you in putting this out there?
God, that's such a great question. You're really, really good at this.
It's what the universe wanted. And they wanted you to answer, unfortunately, so that's the hard part.
The universe wants you interviewing people. God, there's so much to say. I guess for me...
It was like a 9-part question, that's why it's not smart.
I guess for me, one thing I want to share, and I'll just be really, really candid, is one of the times I was most unhappy was after the success of The Office. And here's why. I was on one of the most successful TV shows, one of the most high-quality TV shows of all time, and playing an incredibly memorable character surrounded by a beautiful family of wonderful misfits, and we had so much fun on the set, and it was so collaborative, and it was just a dream job in every way. And all I wanted was a bigger movie career. All I wanted was a deal at Warner Brothers. All I wanted was a bigger production company. All I wanted was like this others. It wasn't enough. So here I was, and it was very odd for me because I became famous essentially at age 40. So I was a little bit older, but I was really caught up in I want more than this, and I kick myself for that. Like I wish I could have just spent those years on The Office just reveling in the fact like this is it.
I can't believe you're saying this. I have the exact same regret.
Yeah, do you?
Yep.
Because it's like this is enough, Rainn. You're getting to be a part of an amazing TV show. You worked in the theater. You drove a moving van. You lived in East Harlem during the crack epidemic. Like now, like this, it doesn't get better than this. I mean, we would have lobster rolls at lunch. Remember, Sergio there was lobster sometimes.
I mean, I don't eat lobster, so. But I'm religious. Call me crazy.
But Anyway, for many, many years, I cared very desperately what Hollywood kind of thought of me, and it was this odd balance. Well, here was this dorky actor playing Dwight, and he was always talking about God and the soul, and he had an interview with Oprah, and I had this company called Soul Pancake that was making inspiring, uplifting videos, and it was, and I wanted approval really desperately, and the comedy world of LA really did not know what the hell to do with a comedy actor who was talking about God. It's the most uncool thing there could ever possibly be. And so, and I guess what happened for me in terms of like, what does the universe want from me is, you know, I ceased giving a fuck, and I really feel like I need to honor my authentic voice. And I'm all these things, you know? I'm a dorky guy. I like to play online chess. I like to write. I like to direct. I like to act. I do dramatic work. I like to go back to the theater. And at the same time, I like to probe life's biggest, deepest, strangest, most profound questions. And I want to do it in a way that's uplifting and inspiring and cajoling. And this goes hand in hand with this show that I have coming out in about 3 weeks called The Geography of Bliss, which is a docu-series where I travel the world, and instead of sampling delicious foods, I'm searching for happiness. And it'll be on Peacock, and I'm really excited about it. The episodes are really uplifting and fun and funny, and I take my shirt off a lot, and great laughter is to be had around every corner. But I do feel that ultimately, entertaining people and telling stories, uplifting them, making them laugh like we did on The Office, it's not that different than asking life's big question and having chapters on God and the soul and life after death, and inspiring and uplifting and probing in a different way. It's all part of trying to maximize my human being-ishness.
And by the way, we have questions from the audience, right? Is someone going to bring those up, or just we're getting ready for them? I see the clock. Oh, there they are. Thank you. What's your name, sir? John, everybody.
John.
Oh, these are great. I should have asked for these earlier. What role, if any, do you think psychedelics have in a pending soul boom, given their historical role in these types of awakenings?
Unpopular opinion alert. I think it's completely bogus. And this kind of Joe Roganification of psychedelics, I am old enough to remember my uncle and cousins tripping out to LSD in the mid-'70s and talking about how LSD was going to change everyone's life and change everyone's perspective. And, you know, it created some great Beatles albums, but beyond that, it didn't. It just fried a lot of brains. And then in the 80s and 90s, there was mescaline and mushrooms and peyote. I remember people like, this is going to change your life, it's going to change everything. And now it's ayahuasca. And it's like, we keep looking outside of ourselves for some transformative experience. And we don't need to. We can look inside of ourselves. The way out is the way in. Thich Nhat Hanh. So I think it's an American commercialized shortcut. I've got a free weekend. I'm going to take time off from my insurance job. I'm going to fly down to Costa Rica. There's a shaman at a resort. We're going to do ayahuasca. I'm going to vomit next to the swimming pool and journal my findings. And I'm going to fly back on Monday and be ready for work on Tuesday morning, making a lot of money for my insurance company. And it's like we want kind of enlightenment and gratification to fit in within a weekend, and we want it to like last for years and have this profound experience. That's not how it works. It's a daily practice. The end.
I will have my own follow-up. For those of us who have had insights and been inspired, what do you find are, if not shortcuts, supercharged ways to shake yourself into that? Whether it's jumping in the ocean on New Year's Day. I mean, I think there are people who need, if you don't have a rock bottom in your life, but you are sort of treading water, as I have been at many times in my own life. How do you recommend people shake themselves into insight and a journey?
That's a great question. I don't have an answer. I will say that a rapidly expanding, and by expanding I mean expanding inward. My sinuses are so weird tonight. I think I'm allergic to the Upper East Side. A rapidly expanding, inspanding, is that a word? A rapidly inspanding, unfolding meditation practice can do wonders. It doesn't need to be anything profound. You don't have to do 45 minutes. It can just be 10 minutes sitting on a bench under a tree, breathing and quieting the mind. I think that can do wonders. But I also think that radical compassion and generosity might be a place to start. So we live our lives not in quiet desperation, but we live our lives in self-serving, and radically do something great for another person and see where that leads you. That would be my own version of ayahuasca.
This question might be related. What is in your mugs? I have coffee.
Yeah, water. Sorry.
What do you think is the crowd-pleasing and very interesting question? What do you think is the spirituality of Dwight Schrute?
Great question. I'm going to talk about Dwight Schrute, and then I'm going to talk about The Office, and I would love to get your take as well.
Great.
So Dwight Schrute represents a certain kind of clannishness. Dwight Schrute, I had always said, would make an excellent fascist. And he's kind of Schrute's uber alles. It's clans, and then it's like The Office uber alles. He's very into hierarchies, right? So Michael Scott being the boss. So this is a very, honestly, it's like a 19th century mentality. Dwight Schrute really should have been born in 1878. He would have fit right in. It's his clan, and who's the boss, right? He's like a Prussian. And it was so much, it was a joy to play, but not terribly enlightened. Although I think over the course of the series, you do see Dwight feeling more and more that the folks at the office were not his nemesis, but actually an extended family. So his vision of what a family is started to slowly expand. But I will say that, what's that line that Pam ended the whole series on? Isn't that what it's all about? Someone knows this line.
Small moments.
Isn't it all about the beauty in ordinary things? I think there's something really, thank you. I think there's something, loser. I think that line encapsulates what is beautiful and spiritual and why The Office is lasting, is because every episode had some moments of beauty in ordinary things. And I know Greg Daniels would always say, you just need it 95% funny and just that 5% serious. Was it 5 or 10%? He would talk about very small percentage.
He talked about a different 5% rule in the writer's room.
Okay, all right. But I would like to hear that. But the
next book.
Yeah, next book. But just that little modicum of humanity that shone through in each character is what keeps people watching the show 8 times, 18 times, 28 times. I met someone who'd seen it 40 times. Every single episode's 200 episodes. But it keeps people coming back, and people view it as such a comforting presence in their lives because it does dwell on the beauty of ordinary things. And that's ultimately what a spiritual practice is about. It's gratitude and recognizing with deep compassion and gratitude the beauty of ordinary things.
If you feel there's a spiritual lesson in The Office, would that be it?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. What about you? What else? What did Greg say? And how do you view spirituality as connected to The Office?
I agree with you that I think that that similar to your narc attitude on drugs, I feel that going deep within the characters was the answer to enlightenment. And the fact that you, instead of pointing a telescope into outer space, you pointed a microscope into humankind, and you just went as deep into a random ass person as you would into outer space, and you found just as much extraordinary wonder. So I think that would be my spiritual lesson, just even deeper in the small things.
Let me ask you, what is your current and what is your deepest spiritual struggle?
My current spiritual struggle. I think I've alluded to it a couple of times, speaking on behalf of Hollywood and people for whom have not hit rock bottom and are treading water. I find myself in that situation a lot, where it's like everything's fine by any material measure. I'm very lucky and happy, and yet I feel there must be more, and I don't feel spiritually fulfilled. Now, I do seek. I'm not, and I believe in this book, and I believe in your message, and I believe in religion, which is not even a popular word compared to spirituality. And I listen to a lot of Christian podcasts because they're good podcasters. Every time they say I'm going to hell, I'm like, well, I don't agree with that, but the rest of it are like, ah. So I'd say my spiritual journey is I keep pointing up. I think finding sort of a higher compass, a higher star to, and I do think that is
How is that
God.
influencing your voice as a writer and a director?
I
do think Vengeance was a really interesting moral journey that was reflective of contemporary culture.
Yeah, and I think that character is an expression of all the flaws I see in myself. As someone who is lost and needs to find meaning. So I think it makes people better writers if you can. Although it's not always funny.
Yeah.
You got to have funny stuff too. How has Ram Dass or other spiritual teachers played a role in your spiritual journey?
I'm not that familiar with Ram Dass's work. I've seen a couple documentaries on him and read some of his writings. I think he's absolutely brilliant and beautiful, and his message is kind of as close to perfect as any contemporary, he just recently passed away, but spiritual teacher. I am drawn so greatly to Thich Nhat Hanh, who combines this beautiful dance of something I talk about in the book is the inward spiritual journey where we seek enlightenment, increased kindness, increased spiritual virtues, more serenity, peace, and vision in our personal life. And at the same time, Thich Nhat Hanh, of course, famously protested the Vietnam War, always worked with the poor, and served others selflessly decade after decade. That this dance, this yin and yang of the two sides of the spiritual coin of growing oneself internally and serving externally, he did so beautifully. And Eckhart Tolle, I just adore, and I find him to be brilliant and enlightened. And whenever I'm stressed out, I put on his audiobooks and listen to his strange, trollish Austrian accent. You are just only in the moment. He's like the, well, I don't want to say it. He's great.
And you asked me about my writing, are there other projects that you are either writing or developing as an actor or as a producer that are influenced by spirituality or your journey as well?
Yeah, I just finished writing a screenplay with a friend of mine that's a kind of contemporary take on Frankenstein with a woman monster. And it's a lot about bioengineering, and it's got a lot of tech stuff and sci-fi, which is another great love of mine. But
Sci-fi is very spiritual.
What's that?
Sci-fi is an extremely spiritual genre.
It is. It can absolutely be revelatory. When I think about like the spiritual lessons one learns from The Matrix, the mythology of Star Wars. I talk a great deal about Star Trek in here as one of my favorite shows of all time, and how Star Trek is really where we should be aiming as a species. How do we get to the Federation? So that I'm very excited about.
If aliens arrived and the world had to unite to fight them off, do you think we could do it?
No.
Why not?
Are you kidding me? A species that had the technological capabilities of going through time and space or wormholes to reach planet Earth, and we're gonna shoot an AR-15 at them?
Maybe they have a flaw. Maybe I'm saying technologically, yeah, like in Independence Day. Ideologically, they have a flaw. I'm sorry,
was
not
that?
ideologically. They fucked up something.
Okay.
You know, water. They're not used to water. I don't know.
That was that movie
point
by
is-
M. Night Shyamalan.
The
No.
point is, do you think we would be able to unite, or do you think that we would unite with the aliens against our other enemies or whatever?
I don't know, man. That was your first lame question.
I think first of all, if you believed in aliens in the 1970s, you were a cuckoo. You were a tinfoil hat wearing cuckoo. If you don't believe in aliens right now, you're an idiot. You just need to look at the evidence, the hard physical proof, the videotapes of these things that are defying all the laws of science being seen by very sober pilots and generals and Air Force commanders. And in every culture of the world, it's astonishing. I'm really unhappy with my sinuses right now. Do you kind of hear that? It's like, that's what I need. Hold on a second. Talk among yourselves. 100% there's aliens, but I think that the thing the aliens are saddest about is because of climate change, we're having massive species extinctions. And I think they're looking at planet Earth really, really sad at like, oh, there goes that snail. And oh, we loved that moth and now it's no more. Oh, God's beautiful creation of that bird.
They came to see moths?
Yes.
Now, you are presuming, and this is your optimistic side, that the aliens have a spiritual advancement and a sensitivity that
They would have to.
That we lack. You think you have to?
Yes.
Because technologically, we've never been more advanced, but spiritually, that's not true.
It's, again, adversarial systems are unsustainable, and we can only reach a certain level of development before we have to figure out how to get along and unify. So the aliens would have to get along and unify. And in order to do that, you have to get rid of us and them attitude and see everyone as one. And this is going to then bleed into the universe as one. There really is no separation between Rainn and BJ. We're just, one entity having this conversation. And they would, of necessity, have a spiritual maturity that we lack.
Something to aspire to.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's no difference really between them and us.
There isn't.
Yeah. Well, I hope you've all learned something here tonight. I know I have. I had a wonderful time talking to you. Please give a round of applause to Rainn Wilson, author of Soul Boom.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.